The market for CLM, or Contract Lifecycle Management, continues to grow. Are CLMs exclusive to contracts? The short answer is no. The C can also be repurposed for content lifecycle management. But there are core characteristics that do center somewhat on legal agreements, but not holistically. This brief video will cover those core components that a content lifecycle management, which includes contracts, will have. These core features are the base level that the technology should offer. More and more features and functionality are being added into CLMs, and that technology will become the next generation. So let's take a look at each of the core components a CLM must have, and we'll talk about them briefly. Metadata. The metadata component of the technology really speaks to the database or the storage. Where are you going to put the data about the data? You have an agreement, you have a contract, you have a document. There's other information about it. Where's that going to be stored? How is that going to be retrieved? That is what the metadata is all about. The metadata can aid in decision making. It can assist in inferences as well as business intelligence, and can help when we get later into the core components of workflows. Our next topic is intake forms. Intake forms, how are you getting the data into the system? In the future, it'll be feed a contract or feed an agreement or feed a piece of content into a system. The system will use its AI or natural language processing models to pattern match and extract information. We're almost there, but still we have the traditional web form concept. And from that web form, valuable human entered information comes from. That human entered information, or copied from other systems, then can be stored as metadata in the data structure layer or the database layer or the data tier layer. Now the output of the CLM is our next topic. The output is the content, and that content is a combination of static information as well as dynamic information. The dynamic information comes from the metadata, and that metadata is merged into these templates, primarily Word document formats, but it doesn't have to be that. There's other things that can get merged and other vessels, if you will, of content structures, Excel, PDF, other formats, file formats, HTML, where merging can happen. But primarily, it is the Word document that is the vessel for storing the content. Our next subject is redlining. This really does focus on more of a legal angle. However, it's change tracking. That's really what it is. What has happened in the document? Who last touched it? What did they do to change something? Is there something we need to be made aware of or not? So these systems want to have that history of those changes visible, so the human eye can easily check for the change and begin the process of analysis. As a piece of content, makes its way through the system, workflows are used. These workflows can be designed with most low-code, no-code approaches, and relieving a business developer from the need to fully understand core coding paradigms. But the most important part of the workflow is the routing and the approvals. And we have three large categories of those approvals: internal approvals, external approvals, and then the signature piece, which is in effect a final approval when it comes to legal type agreements. But workflows can handle other heavy lifting for moving content into folder structures, sending out emails, working with the content, comparing content if necessary, as well as other updates to the database layer. It effectively is the glue between the front end of intake forms and the data layer. A variant of that has developed now, and it is a terminology of IFTTT. This emanates from programming terminology, standing for if this, then that. And it pertains to automation. Automation with IFTTT is different than workflow development. It's highly graphical, meaning you select your choices, and it's essentially building rules. If you've ever built rules to move email messages from an inbox into a folder structure, that's your IFTTT concept here. And many of these software applications now have that as a component. It can be used in addition to workflow, to augment workflow, or even sometimes, depending on the task, replace the need for a workflow. As we move further down the shelf here of features, the AI, NLP concept, artificial intelligence, the marketing terminology for it, natural language processing, as we're talking about content here, we're talking about pieces of text or strings. NLP are the pattern matchers that are ripping through the text, looking for the pattern to extract relevant data and either store that information back into a database table or some storage, and then allow for reporting, analysis, reusability, etc. These systems need to come with this feature, and this feature needs to be made in a way that non-programmers will be able to maintain the models to increase the percentage of accuracy in capturing the information from the content. Where all of this content is stored is as important as how is it stored. This is a big question, and I think this is actually going to spawn the future of CLMs and other storage architectures. Why are we storing the entire document during the processing of the document? Why is it document centric? Yes, the final output needs to be document centric. But when we talk about legal agreements and that type of content, it is clause centric, paragraph centric. This is true for any type of content. The document assembles all the discrete pieces of content to produce a final container. but that's not how it is constructed. The discrete unit of information or content and where it should be tracked and the metadata around it, that is a game changer of sorts. And I don't see that yet in the CLM space. So keep an eye out on different approaches to breaking up the content and storing it in a way that it can be assembled into a final document. But when it needs to be reviewed or used, it can go in various ways through workflows and be accessed in various ways at various levels. That's a big change that may happen in the CLMs of the future. A standard of any software as a service application is security. Integration with single sign-on, integration with other systems as necessary, all being governed by a security model, should be a default in today's architecture. How the CLM works with Esignature is another large component. E-signatures are becoming very prevalent in many different types of systems. Cloud storage applications are offering e-signature. So how does the premium then come about with a CLM? It has to do with the integration, the seamless integration of the e-signature component as part of the larger CLM. And finally, but certainly not least, how does the data bubble back out? How do you get the reports and the dashboards and the business intelligence around the metadata, around the pieces of content, around the document to appear for actionable usage? It's paramount that the information be presented in a digestible format. It has to be stored in a way, therefore, that reporting and integration with other BI tools is seamless and scales. So the CLM of today and into the future is changing. Natural language, along with version control of content, along with a larger understanding that this is content that can be stored in numerous types of applications, is pushing the CLMs in different directions. How your purchase or view of CLM changes with that will be of special importance when making the decision about what direction to head and whether to commit to a CLM or some other central source of truth for your content.